Who is the biggest wild card in the country? This team could go all the way up into the top 3. This team could fall outside of the top 25. Arch was not a failure last year. Arch was not a bust last year. If you think that, you don't know ball. We don't think they're right there. They are right there. But guys, there is a clear number 1, and I honestly don't understand why this is not more unanimous. There's no other team you can put at number 1. Welcome into the preseason top 25 edition of the Joel Klatt Show. Our show is brought to you by Graduate by Hilton. We thank them for their support. It is here. Let's go. I mean, this is kind of the unofficial start of the college football season, isn't it? Let's do it. I can't wait to get through this because there's some surprises in here in my preseason top 25. There's no doubt. One right off the bat, by the way. You're going to love this. And then some that you'll expect. And then I'll get ultimately to who I think is the number 1 team in the country here as we barrel towards the regular season. Can't wait to get things started. Man, college football is the absolute best. If you're here, you know that. So let's get started. Okay. Full disclosure, I had a quite a debate in my own head and with the group here about 25. And you're never going to believe the 2 teams that I was debating between at 25. I was debating between UCLA and Oklahoma State at 25. That's right. One of those teams is going to be in my top 25, and here's the one I landed on, and partly because I just think that their schedule is going to be easier because of their conference, and that's Oklahoma State. I landed on Oklahoma State. They're 25 in my preseason top 25. How often do you see a team that went 1-11 start out in the top 25? Welcome to the new modern age of college football. Listen, I keep telling you guys that this is better than it used to be, and I kind of am proving it here. Right? There's so much turnover that you can immediately turn your fortune around. And I think Oklahoma State is going to be able to do that. I really do. Mike Gundy, great coach, 21 years, so many 10-win seasons, a guy that I really respect and like a lot. But he's out, and now Eric Morris is in at Oklahoma State. Eric Morris comes in from North Texas. He led them to the number 1 scoring offense in the country a year ago. Morris has worked with kind of a who's who of quality offensive players in college football. Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward in his career. So you know he's going to get the most out of his quarterback. He did that a year ago with Drew Messemaker, and now Drew Messemaker is with him in Stillwater at Oklahoma State. I love this. Completely different team. 55 transfers, 17 of them from North Texas, including Mestemaker. He led the country in passing. Caleb Hawkins, their running back, he led the country in rushing touchdowns as a freshman. Their slot receiver, a guy that I think is a really good player, Wyatt Young, 3rd in the country in receiving yards last year. Again, I considered UCLA for the same reasons, right? They're going to have a reboot just like Oklahoma State is going to have a reboot. They're going to do it with Bob Chesney. More on them in a little bit, but I'm going to land with Oklahoma State. I think that this is a really good football team that can turn it around quickly. Remember, in a conference in the Big 12 where everyone's kind of mashed together. So all of a sudden you start winning some close games and you can have a big bump in year 1. I think that might happen for Eric Morris there at Oklahoma State. Can't wait to see that. Okay, now we move on in the top 25. I'm going to stay in the Big 12. Arizona. I'm a big fan of the Cats. I'm a big fan of Brent Brennan, now in his 2nd season in Tucson. 9 wins last season in his 2nd season, I should say. He'll be in his 3rd season. First team All Big 12 quarterback Noah Fafita. He's coming back, which I think is huge because he's so experienced. 34 career starts now in his 4th year as a starter. Now, the big question for me with Arizona, I had them in the Holiday Bowl, and I really love covering Brent Brennan. He's a candid guy. He's a heck of a football coach. They had a really good team, and then a bunch of their guys that were excellent in the secondary and older players decided to opt out for the draft. So they were shorthanded in the bowl game. It kind of showed on the offensive side, the defensive side, even though they tried to come back there in the second half. But they've got to replace a lot of those secondary players, particular 3 All Big 12 safeties. They did bring in some guys like Cam Champa. He's a FCS All-American at Northern Colorado, experienced small school player. I think that can help out quite a bit. And they were excited about their young players that got to play in that bowl game in the Holiday Bowl. I think that's huge. Their schedule has some tough road games. I don't love that aspect. They got to go to BYU. That's not easy. Texas Tech, not easy. Kansas State, not easy. And we'll see what Colin Klein does with Kansas State. So Arizona's at 24. At 23, I'm going to go Tennessee. Listen, I think Tennessee can go either way here. They've got a good roster. I'm excited about their roster. 4 straight top 15 recruiting classes. So they can recruit. Heupel's offenses have always produced. Okay. It's not an offense issue with the Vols. They've been the number 1 scoring offense in the country since Heupel arrived in Knoxville. The big question for me is the inexperience at quarterback, in particular in that system. Can you step in and produce right away? Whoever starts for them is going to have 0 career starts in college football. You've got George McIntyre, the redshirt freshman, or you've got the 5-star true freshman that's coming in, Faison Brandon. They are going to have some talent around them, though. Again, like, offense might not be a concern. All SEC running back Deshaun Bishop. They've got the SEC Freshman of the Year, Braylon Staley, at wide receiver, to go along with a 5-star freshman that they brought in, TK Keys. So, again, talent out there. They run that deep choice system, so the quarterback has to come along quickly, and he's got to be able to make post-snaps decisions down the field. It's a key part of that offense, and that's going to be a big part of whether they're going to be successful. Defensively, Jim Knowles comes in. Remember, Jim Knowles won a national championship with Ohio State. Then he was at Penn State last year for kind of that debacle. It all fell apart. Now he's going to be in Tennessee. That Vols defense struggled last year. They do when you look at their schedule. I'm kind of like, well, listen, they've got a lot of these big games at home. And historically, they've been very good at home. Now, they weren't great at home a year ago. They lost a couple of close ones. What was that? Georgia and OU. I think Vandy got after them late in the season and kind of blew them out. But 3 of their hardest 4, I would say, games this season are at Neyland: Texas, LSU, and Alabama. And then their tough road game is at Texas A&M. Again, not an easy schedule, but if you start to get back to what they were at home a couple of years ago, remember they beat Alabama. This is a team that, they might make some noise in the SEC. And again, experience at quarterback, that's got to develop, and then got to take care of home field advantage. At 22 is Iowa. Iowa. We hear all the time, and this is one of those things, like, we've seen SEC media days, we've seen Big Ten media days, and the SEC folks, they just, and they should do this, I guess, but they talk about, like, how difficult it is to win at any location in the SEC. And that might be true. Same is true in the Big Ten, in particular when you're bringing up a squad like Iowa. Iowa, it doesn't matter what they bring back. They don't have a quarterback. Doesn't matter. Why? Kirk Ferentz is still there. Phil Parker is still there, their defensive coordinator. It's not a quarterback-centric program. They're going to continue to do the same things, play the same sound football, physical, stop the run, run the football. They had the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line a year ago. They've got to replace some of those guys up front, but they're going to be able to run the football. They're replacing all of their specialists, but they're going to play great special teams. Why? Because that's what Kirk Ferentz does. That's what he does. They're going to go kind of the group of 5 FCS route in the transfer portal and bring in a lot of experienced players from that level that are leveling up. We've seen that work before at several other places, including Indiana. So Iowa is going to be 22. I think a lot of it comes down to how they develop up front. If they can get their offensive line up and running quickly and run the football well, then I think that they've got something. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the line here. I trust the Iowa infrastructure. Don't you? I think that they've proven that they are a trustworthy infrastructure under Kirk Ferentz, so they're 22. At 21, I'm going to go with Houston. I got to be honest, I don't feel great about this one, but I'm going to leave it in here. After you're done, you kind of look over it, and I'm like, wait a second, am I really going to have Tennessee and Iowa behind Houston? And I'm like, well, Willie Fritz, he won 10 games in his second year at Houston, coming off that impressive run at Tulane. They've got their quarterback back. I like that. Connor Wigman is back. They made a portal pickup that I'm bullish on when they got Mekhi Hughes, the running back from Oregon. Remember, he was with Fritz in Tulane, at Tulane, and then he went up to Oregon. We thought he was going to be kind of a focal point for Dan Lanning of that Oregon offense a year ago, and he wasn't. So he's going back to Fritz, but this time Fritz is not at Tulane. He's at Houston. I think that could be a nice pickup for them. The one big question, and this is why I'm sitting there, I'm like, do I really want them behind Tennessee and Iowa? I'm going to leave them here. I'm going to do it. They've got to continue to win close games. That was a huge part of that 10-win year a year ago. They were 6-1 in their one-score games last year. It's hard to repeat that. It's really hard to repeat that. And that's one of those trends that you almost always anticipate going the other direction, or at least reverting back to the mean rather than going 6-1 again. But with a quarterback, maybe some of those aren't one possession games for them. And they're, 2 possession games. That's kind of what I'm banking on here. So Houston at 21. 20, this is a good one. Messy early offseason, but maybe all is fine in Washington. Give me the Huskies at 20. Damon Williams back at quarterback. Let's go. Remember he signed a nice deal with Washington. Then he went into the portal and Jed Fish was like, no. And there was some legal stuff here and there. And then all of a sudden, Damon Williams is like, hey, I'm just kidding with you. And he's back. So that's my biggest question, honestly. Listen, he's a heck of a player. He averaged 332 total yards in their 9 wins a year ago. He can run around. He killed Rutgers on the ground. Jed Fish is a really good coach that I think continues every single year. His teams tend to get better. If you go back throughout his history, that's what 9-4 a year ago, now in his second season, like I could see them, putting together something, and they had a solid recruiting class, top 15 recruiting class. They've got to replace Denzel Boston and Jonah Coleman. Don't love that on offense. I thought they were really good players, but they've got Vinesbright back, the wide receiver, Vinesbright. They've got to replace him. He went to Arizona State, Desmond Roebuck, the wide receiver, is the one that's back after a strong freshman year. They get Rashid Williams back. He was dealing with injuries last year. And on the defensive side, they should be a lot healthier for their coordinator, Ryan Walters. Now, Ryan Walters is a heck of a football coach. If you remember, he was the coordinator of that Illinois defense. It was one of the better defenses in the country. What was that, back in 2023, I want to say? They had Michigan dead to rights that year and almost won that game. Might have been the year before that. But he's there as coordinator, and he was a top 15 defense a year ago, despite all of those injuries. If they're healthier, they could be a lot better. And that's a team that has some critical games at home. So if they play better in big games, particular Damon Williams, and he doesn't turn the football over, then they might have something. Louisville is at 19. I like Louisville a lot. I like Jeff Brom a lot. Heck of a coach. He's done a great job everywhere that he's been. He's done a great job here at Louisville. 3 straight seasons with at least 9 wins. And remember, he had Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Before he went to Louisville. He is a terrific quarterback coach. And now he brings in a transfer from Ohio State, Lincoln Kienholz, and we'll see how that goes. I think that they've got an absolute star at running back in Isaac Brown. They brought in a top 15 portal class to fill some shoes. It's not a conference that I think is overly difficult. They do have an early game against SMU. I think that's the pivotal game in the ACC, is Louisville, SMU early. Listen, Miami's the best team in the ACC. Don't at me. The pivotal game to see who goes and plays them, I think it starts with that Louisville-SMU matchup. That one is early in the year. So Louisville at number 19. At 18, it's SMU. That's why I put them right next to each other, because of that game early in the year. I can't wait to see that one. I think it's going to determine who goes and plays Miami. I'm a fan of Rhett Lashley. Had him in the bowl game. That SMU team played Arizona in the Holiday Bowl, and I was thoroughly impressed with what Rhett Lashley has built. And I know that it's like, I don't know if it's because it's SMU or it was kind of a weird entry into the ACC and not getting a share, and their boosters saying, we don't care if we get revenue and this and that. But like, they've been really successful. He's done a great job, Lashley has. He's got 38 wins in 4 seasons, and he's made SMU an absolute destination for players out of the Metroplex, that Dallas area. They've got a really experienced quarterback in Kevin Jennings, and if he just doesn't turn the football over, he is dynamic. He's a guy that has led them to a playoff in his career. He's a heck of a player. They beat Miami a year ago. He's got 26 starts under his belt. He's exciting. And that huge game against Louisville, that's week 3, by the way. I think that the winner of that is driver's seat to go and play Miami in the ACC championship game. So Rhett Lashley and SMU at 18. At 17, I've got Penn State. I toyed around with having them higher, in particular because when you're looking at these schedules, and more specifically out of the SEC and the Big Ten, you look at like who hit the schedule lottery in those two conferences. I mean, Penn State hit the schedule lottery this year in terms of who they're missing and who they're playing. And then you get all the turnover. So James Franklin out. Now, that was messy last year. There's no doubt. And then the search took forever, but they landed the plane. It's like circling over Chicago O'Hare for 2 hours because of lightning. And it's like, are we ever going to land the plane? That was the Penn State coaching search last year. And then it's like, oh, yeah, we're down. We're down. We landed the plane. Matt Campbell, hell of a football coach. 10 seasons at Iowa State, now at State College. And he brought everybody. He brought everybody. The most important person that he brought was Rocco Becht. Rocco Becht is the most experienced quarterback in college football. 39 career starts. The second most important person that he brought along with him from Iowa State, Taylor Mauser, the offensive coordinator. So now Becht and Mauser still together, running the same offense, and by the way, with a lot of the same players. They brought everybody. He's going to be handing the ball off to Carson Hansen. He was at Iowa State, second team All Big 12 a year ago. James Peoples transferred from Ohio State, so he's at Penn State now. They made a great defensive coordinator hire, and Danton Lynn stole him away for USC. Danton comes back to his alma mater at Penn State now. He's going to coordinate that defense. And again, they won the schedule lottery. I think this is a team that, if you just look at the schedule, and I've talked about it the entirety of the offseason, that's a 10-win football team. A 10-win football team. All right? They've got a tough game at Michigan. They've got to host USC. Those are their 2 toughest games. I mean, you miss Indiana, you miss Ohio State, you miss Oregon. Like, this could be a big year. This could be a big year for Penn State. They should start 5-0. Then they're going to have USC at home. The next week, they'll go to Michigan on the road. Those are back-to-back weeks in October. So Penn State, number 17. All right, from there, I got to kind of like a next tier. Okay, so those are the teams that I would consider kind of the back-end top 25 teams. And again, Penn State could probably have jumped up, but again, a lot of that has to do with schedule because we don't really know how all of this is going to work out. It's a reboot. It's just a higher profile reboot than, let's say, Oklahoma State or UCLA with Chesney. It's kind of a reboot for Penn State. But now we get into the next tier, and up until we get to the top 10, these next, 6 teams, I got to be honest, you could almost place them anywhere for me. So I was splitting hairs here, and I'm going to go with 16. I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I know that's lower than some, but let me just tell you about what I love about Ole Miss. I love their backfield. Trinidad Chambliss is excellent. I think he is a fabulous player. He was very close to my top 10 list in terms of top 10 players in college football. I think he's fantastic. I really do. I love his leadership, his toughness, what he did to lead that team through the absolute turmoil of their coach leaving them right before the playoff. Joke. They might have the best backfield in the country with Chambliss and then Kewan Lacey. I love that. They did well in the portal, number 2 ranked portal class. Love that. But here's what's difficult is that Lane is a force of nature, in particular on the offensive side, and he took the offensive staff away. So can you replicate what they were able to do on the offensive side? That's a question, and it's a big question for me. Pete Golding, he's your head coach. Now, he has been on record as saying he didn't want the job. He didn't want to be a head coach, but here he is. He's stepping in almost reluctantly to take over this program, and Pete did a wonderful job in the playoff. Wonderful job. And he should be commended for that. And now he's going to have to be the guy. He built a great transfer portal roster. He's got this excellent quarterback. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder. And then you get to some of the tough games. They've got to open the season against Louisville. Not easy. They've got to host Lane Kiffin and LSU in week 3. That place is going to be fire. absolute fire. They've got road trips to Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma. They have home game against Georgia in November. So for those reasons, trying to replace Lane, in particular on the offensive side, the tough schedule, I've got them at 16. Right ahead of them is Alabama. Cue it up. Bama fans, you know what to do. Go to the comments. You hate it. You think I hate Alabama. Don't hate Alabama. Picked Alabama to win the national championship for like 10 straight years. This is viewing this team through regular lenses and not crimson lenses. I do not love the trajectory of this program right now. Even though they made the playoff a year ago. They got blown out by Georgia. They got blown out by Indiana. That was not a close football game. Indiana physically accosted Alabama. Like, they beat them to death in that Rose Bowl. 50 runs. 50. So here's what I'm concerned about for Bama. They're going to have a brand new quarterback. And where's the run game to help them? You see, that was the biggest issue last year. They had this elite quarterback in Ty Simpson who did his best. They couldn't protect him in big games, and they couldn't run the football. Now, what do I like about Alabama? I love their roster. Kalen DeBoer continues to recruit at a high level. I love their defense. Their secondary should be outstanding. I think that their defense should be a very high-level defense. I think the secondary should be one of the best in the country. They did lose a bunch of transfers on the defensive line. I'm concerned about their line of scrimmage. They lose transfers on D-line. Their offensive line is a huge question mark. They could not run the football a year ago. 126th in yards per carry last year. And this has not really been a staple of Kalen DeBoer. It's not like he's Steve Sarkisian that has always had good running teams, and then all of a sudden he doesn't have a good running team. Like, that's a concern. That's a concern. And so for those reasons, I've got Bama at 15. There are really good programs ahead of them. You start looking at college football, this is not what it used to be in the late, 2000 teens, where it was 1, 2, 3 programs that were elite, and then it's like, well, who knows? No. There's really good programs, and there's a depth of really good programs. Tricky game early against Kentucky in week 2, Will Stein's first big game there as head coach. They've got a 4-game stretch in the middle of the season. Georgia at home, at Tennessee, A&M at home, at LSU after a bye. Yikes. So Alabama is at 15. At 14, I've got BYU. They managed to keep Kalani Sitake. Huge win in Provo. Really good team that has shown that they can absolutely handle the Big 12, and candidly, they can handle everybody except for Texas Tech in the Big 12. The next step for them is leveling up to beat a team like Texas Tech, who clearly has a better roster than they do. Now, they do have L.J. Martin back, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. They've got Bachmeier back, Bear Bachmeier, their quarterback. I like what BYU does. They're consistent. It's kind of like Utah used to be under Kyle Whittingham. It's like, okay, yeah, I know what I'm going to get every single year. They did lose their defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. He went to Michigan to be with Kyle Whittingham, but they should be very good on that side of the ball. They promoted from within. Kelly Papinga is their defensive coordinator. He played at BYU 20 years ago. I'm a big fan of Kalani Sitake. I'm a big fan of this BYU team. I've got him at 14, one spot ahead of Alabama. At 13, I'm going to go with Texas A&M. Mike Elko has done a great job at Texas A&M, and I've been a believer of and certainly optimistic for A&M here for a few years because of Mike Elko. Led the Aggies to the playoff last season. Now, he does have to replace both coordinators. So Colin Klein got a job to go to his alma mater and be the head coach at Kansas State. Jay Bateman, he's out. So he made 2 internal promotions to OC and DC. They got their quarterback back. You can kind of sense a theme. I'm bullish on quarterback experience and quarterbacks coming back. So Marcel Reed, he's back. His next step is being more consistent and not turning the football over and playing really good football against the best competition, right? You don't want to have those lulls, right? We saw them play really poorly and then great. We've seen that even in one game. Wasn't great against Miami. Miami ended up, being better than maybe we even thought in that first round game. I think Reed can improve. He's going to have Craver back on the outside. That's good for them. Defensively, I have some questions. I know they were great on third down. They were the best third down defense in all of college football, but they were not great stopping the run. And that's something that's going to have to get better. Have to get better. In fact, when you strip out their sack yardage, remember Cassius Howell was terrific rushing the quarterback, and sack yardage goes against rushing yardage, which is so stupid. So if you piece that out and you say, like, take away the sacks, what were the Aggies defensively just defending running plays? 127th in college football last year when you take away their sack yardage. That's going to have to improve. There's no doubt. Watch out for Northwestern transfer Anto Saka. I had him last year when Northwestern played Oregon. Really good player. Very good on film. I think he could pop at Texas A&M. He's replacing Cassius Howell. Road games against LSU in September, Alabama in October. Can they get one win out of those two? If they're able to do that, there's a good chance that they're 7-1 going into November, and it's a tough November. So in November, they've got at South Carolina, Tennessee, at Oklahoma, and Texas. So that's A&M. They're 13. At 12, I am very bullish on this team. USC. USC is 12. This is Lincoln Riley's best team at USC. They are a real team at the line of scrimmage. This is real. This is no longer, smoke and mirrors, Caleb Williams, can we throw it around, do all this? No. This is real. They've got an experienced quarterback who I think could be in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Every Lincoln quarterback is in the Heisman Trophy conversation. That's Jaden Mayava. They've got both of their backs back. Remember, Wayman Jordan was outstanding, and then he got hurt, and King Miller rolled in and was fantastic as well. Both of those guys back. Again, the defensive line finally looks legit. That's been a huge problem. The biggest issue that USC has had is that defensively they have not stopped the run. If you take a look at their rushing margin, what they gain versus what they give up, it was 61st in the country. Well, Lincoln's OU teams, they were 6th in the country in rush margin. Again, what they gain versus what they give up. So if USC improves defensively, which they should on the defensive line, then watch out for USC. They've got the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Young players who are not going to have to step in and play right away, but could fill in and provide a ton of depth for them. Like, for instance, their defensive number 1 defensive end, Luke Waffle. So just like Colin Simmons a few years ago, didn't have to play a ton as a true freshman for Texas, but came in and had production because he was able to play in very certain and specific situations. That'll be the same thing that USC is able to do with a lot of these talented young players. Gary Patterson in as defensive coordinator. That's interesting. My only hesitation, they would be easily in the top 10. Everything that I've just listed out, love. Why are they not in the top 10 then, Joel? Because their schedule's brutal. 3-game stretch, home against Oregon, home against Washington, at Penn State. That's one 3-game stretch. They also have home games against Ohio State and a road game against Indiana. So yes, they've got to play Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana at Penn State and Washington. Woo! Probably a good year not to play Notre Dame, if we're being honest with ourselves. So it comes down to this. I think that if you are looking at this and you're saying they have to go 10-2, that means they've got to split at home with Oregon and Ohio State. If not, then you've got to be thinking about, is this the team with this schedule, the way that they could possibly play with wins like at Penn State or Washington? Could they get in at 9-3? And this is a schedule that could do it. Last year, we had that debate with Texas. College football is always a year late. We have these debates, whether it's a group of 5 team or a 9-3 team, about should this team be in? And then it's this 2-year cycle. It's almost like we prepare ourselves for it. We front load ourselves for what ultimately happens in college football. Eventually, a 9-3 team is going to get into this playoff. Is it potentially USC this year? It could be. Like I said, this is a top 10 team that I'm nervous about their schedule. So that's USC at 12. At 11, it's Texas Tech. I thought about moving them lower than this, but I didn't. And here's the reason, is that even though they went through this Brendan Sorsby saga, and yes, he was a good player and could have certainly elevated their offense, which they desperately needed based on that offensive performance against Oregon in the playoff, this is still a very good roster, and it's clearly the best team in the Big 12. It's been a crazy few months, but again, I think this team should be right back in the Big 12 championship game. Will Hammond is going to be their quarterback. He was the backup last year for Baron Morton and played well at times. Then he got injured. And by all accounts, at least from what I've heard, he's ahead of schedule on his rehab, and he should be able to go early in the season, if not week 1, 100%. This roster is talented. They hit the portal again. They will not get beat in terms of spend. That's their mantra. They will not be beat on a player. So they had to go out and replace some guys. They had to replace Romello Height and David Bailey, Jacob Rodriguez on the defensive side. So who'd they get? They got some really good players. You might not have heard of them, but they've got some really good players. Austin Romaine from Kansas State. He's got over 160 tackles the last 2 years. He comes in to replace Jacob Rodriguez as a linebacker. They got these 2 edge players. Again, you've probably never heard of them. Trey White, San Diego State, Adam Trick, Miami of Ohio. What have those 2 guys done? Well, White and Trick combined for 15 sacks and 118 quarterback pressures last season. So can they replace Height and Bailey? Probably. Schedule lines up for them to be at least 11-1, if not 12-0. And again, right back in that Big 12 championship game. The question for them, are they going to be able to level up when they go up against a team that's a really elite team like an Oregon, and in particular on the offensive side of the ball? All right, so now we get into the top 10. My top 10 teams in college football leading into the 2026 season. I've got 2 teams I debated here at 9 and 10. I've got a wild card, and then I've got my clear top 7. And really a clear top 1. Then I've got 2 through 7, a wild card, and these 2 teams that I debated at 9 and 10. That's how we're going to break this out in my top 10 teams. All right. Number 10, Michigan. Probably higher than most, but this is probably the second biggest wild card team in college football. More on the first wild card team when I coming up. I believe in Kyle Whittingham. You guys know that with the way I've talked about Utah over the years. I used to say death taxes in Utah football. I should say death taxes in Kyle Whittingham. I believe in this guy's structure. I believe in what he believes in. He believes in the fundamental traits to go and be a great football team. They will be physical. They will play great defense. They will run the football. That is a great blueprint for Michigan. We saw that blueprint win a national championship for Michigan just a couple of years ago. He also brought a very good offensive coordinator in Jason Beck, who did wonders for him at Utah. And maybe the key guy that he brought, nobody talks about this, his offensive line coach, Jim Harding. Do you know why there were so many Utah offensive linemen that are either playing in the NFL or being drafted into the NFL on an annual basis? Jim Harding. He's a great developer, and so now you can get back to that great O-line play that we saw for so many years at the end of Harbaugh in Michigan. That was a young team last year in Michigan, and I know a lot of those guys got in the portal, but then they got out of the portal and came back to Michigan, so the roster is actually better than you anticipate when you actually look at it. It was an incredibly young team, in particular on the offensive side last year. They had 6 freshmen, including Underwood, out there playing in most of those big moments late in the season. You've got Underwood. Can he develop? 17 total touchdowns, 11 turnovers. That has to improve. There's no doubt. But Jason Beck has a track record of getting the most out of his quarterbacks, in particular athletic quarterbacks. Jason Beck was with Devin Dampier 2 years ago in New Mexico and then at Utah. And what did he do? Oh, all he did is lead the country in terms of quarterback production on the ground, or at least the Power 4. If you look at what Beck was able to do with Dampier, it's about the quarterback run game. And I'm not saying that Underwood is going to have to go out there and run it 30 times per game, but Dampier and Bird Ficklin were running it about 16 times per game as compared to Underwood's 7. See, I think if Underwood runs the ball between 10 and 12 times per game, that offense becomes much more dynamic. You've got Andrew Marsh on the outside. You've got these backs in the backfield that are going to be incredibly, I think, potent, including Savion Hyder, who, by all accounts, is one of the better true freshmen in the country. If you look at the top 4 teams in quarterback rushing from a year ago, you've got the 3 academies and Utah. Navy, Army, 1 and 2, Utah, number 3, Air Force, number 4, 104 yards per game from quarterbacks in terms of rushing. That's the big deal for me on the Michigan side. I think they'll be good on defense. Jay Hill's their coordinator. They've got a secondary with a lot of good players. Jair Hill, Zeke Berry, Smith Snowden transfers in from Utah. He's very good. John Henry Daly transfers in from Utah after being an All-American. Michigan's going to be very good. Schedule's not easy, but Michigan's going to be very good. Guess who they play week 2? My number 9 team, OU. This was the debate that I had at 10-9. It was Michigan and OU, and I'm going OU at 9. The reason that they got the edge over Michigan is one simple reason. John Mateer is healthy, and when he's healthy, they have the edge at quarterback. Can they run it better this year? That's a question. They get their backfield back, but they're going to have to run it better than they did a year ago. He can't do everything for you. Remember last year after they beat Michigan and he did everything and he was kind of the leader in the Heisman race at that moment. And I told you then exactly what played out. He can't do this every week. He will break down. And he did. And once he broke down, they started to struggle a little bit. If he's healthy, he's one of the better players in the country. This is a team that plays great defense under Brent Venables. So the question becomes, can you protect your quarterback with a run game? Venables has to protect Mateer. They were 10-3 last season, first playoff berth in a few years, and Venables did a hell of a job on the defensive side. That was one of the best defenses in all of college football. It was like Ohio State, Indiana, Oklahoma. Like those were the defenses that would really get after you, but the offense was woefully short of that standard, and the problem was the fact that they couldn't run it. You've got to be able to run the football. They've got 3 starters back on the left side of the offensive line. They brought in a transfer from Arkansas to play right tackle. They've got their backfield back, Xavier Robinson and Torrey Blaylock, So they should be better running the football, but that's got to be a commitment. They've got to be able to do that. And then if I'm an OU fan, I'm just thinking to myself, can we finally marry an elite side of the ball with a side of the ball that can just be okay? Can we do that? You know, we had all those great offenses under Lincoln Riley, and the defense was just totally suspect. And then last year you got this great defense, and the offense is totally suspect. And you're like, can we just get a marriage? Sooner fans, I hear you, but you're inside of my top 10. I think this is a very good program. I think Venables is doing a heck of a job, and I've got them at number 9. Watch out for David Stone, the defensive lineman. I think he's an absolute star. Now I get into the biggest wild card in the country. Who is the biggest wild card in the country? This team could go all the way up into the top 3. This team could fall outside of the top 25. I have no idea. I'm putting them at 8. I think it's going to go well, but guys, we don't know. LSU. We're just on the Lane Kiffin Express here, everyone. What's going to happen? I have no idea. Let me give you one quick pessimism. Everyone's like, oh, their roster's going to be incredible. I think it is. I think it is as well. They got the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. Absolutely, they did. Guess what they did before last season? They had the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. And that didn't go well. They could not play their way offensively out of a wet paper bag. They couldn't do it. Defense was okay. But enter Lane Kiffin, that should fix the offense. Now let's get to the optimism side of LSU. He averages over 500 yards of offense just falling out of bed. That's what Kiffin does. He brought in Sam Leavitt, heck of a quarterback. He rebuilt the roster out of the transfer portal, and he's got a history at Ole Miss of rebuilding the roster out of the transfer portal and it working. It didn't fall apart at Ole Miss. They were able to go in there and succeed, and he did very well with that model. So can he replicate that at LSU? History would suggest that he can. Okay, I think that we're going to turn on the television when they're playing Clemson in week 1, and we're going to be like, oh, wow, LSU is for real. Now, could it go the other way? Yeah, it probably could. I mean, who knows what he's going to say or what he's going to do? I mean, he's an absolute loose cannon. Just is. It just is. I mean, he left a playoff team before the playoffs. That is crazy. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Piano key neckties out here. If they fix the offense, they should be good. I think that their transfer meshing will be solid. And now it lines up for, I think, what is a beginning of the season that can either set them up for failure or set them up for success. Clemson to start things out. La Tech, at Ole Miss. Okay. You think they're going to be ready to play? You think it's not just the fan, the environment's going to be incredible. Yeah, it is. And guess who's going to be jacked out of their minds The Ole Miss players. That's all they've been preaching there is like, hey, you want to come back and have a shot at that guy, the snake? And they're like, yeah. So good luck there. And then A&M. Set you for success, set you up for failure. Let's get into my top 7. Again, I think I've got what I think is a clear number 1. And then truth be told, you can talk me into any order from 2 to 7. Any order. So I don't want to hear the like, I can't believe you have this team over that. We are splitting hairs from 2 to 7. Splitting hairs. And we start at 7. Again, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Texas is 7. Started last season, preseason number 1. They've got things that they have to fix. We know that. And we can't just assume that they're going to be fixed until we see it. And the biggest area that they need to fix is the offensive line running the football. That has got to turn around. I think Sark would be the first one to tell you that. It can't all be on Arch Manning. And if you look at Sark's history, his quality teams always run the ball well. Always. All the way back to Washington when he was the head coach with Bishop Sankey running the football. You know, like that's what he needs. That's what he does. It allows him to take shots down the field. It allows him to open up the middle of the field. It allows him to put the defense in conflict in terms of what they're going to stop. He didn't have that a year ago. That has to change, okay? Last year, they didn't run it well. They didn't have great play out of the wide receivers, which we had come to be accustomed to, staples for Sark. And so they went in the portal and they spent, and they tried to fix those areas. They got guys like Cam Coleman. I think that's a great upgrade. Love Cam Coleman. They got Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown for their backfield, okay? We'll see how that goes. I think Arch got undue criticism a year ago. I went over this last week in my top 10 players, but like Arch was not a failure last year. Arch was not a bust last year. If you think that, you don't know ball. Point blank, period. This guy was an elite top 3 quarterback in the sport the last half of the season, and the people around him were falling woefully short of expectations. So you can say like, oh, Arch wasn't, he didn't do anything. Yeah. Their wide receiver core was not good. They couldn't run the football, and the offensive line stunk. And yet still, over the last 6 games, he averaged 320 total yards, 20 total touchdowns, and 2 turnovers in his last 6 games. He was a monster against Michigan in the bowl game. Like, Arch is not the issue. This is not about Arch having to fix anything. This is about Texas having to fix things around Arch. Get your wide receiver room right. Get the offensive line right. Get the running game right. Defensively, I thought they were going to be an elite defense. They weren't. They fire Pete Kwiatkowski. They bring in Will Muschamp. Now he's got an elite pass rusher in Colin Simmons. So what are they going to be on the defensive side? The entire question for me about Texas is not Arch Manning. And if your question is about Arch, sorry, you don't know what you're looking at. Can they be physical? Can they run it? I've got them at 7 because I've got Georgia at 6 and Georgia still runs the SEC. That's just what it is. Georgia is still the class of that league, and until somebody beats them, that's the way it's going to be. They still have a great roster. They still have Kirby Smart, and they still have a absolute gamer of a quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, who is at his best when his best is needed. We saw it time and time again. You can't kill Georgia. Why can you not kill Georgia? Yes, there's something inherent about the program and the roster and all of those things. Their toughness, their physicality, and that's something that you expect with Kirby Smart. Yes, all of those things are true. Absolutely. Why can you not kill Georgia? Because Gunnar Stockton plays his absolute butt off in the fourth quarter. If you look at his fourth quarters, he's incredible. 83% throwing the football, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions in the fourth quarter. Dude is elite in the fourth quarter. Remember some of the throws he made late? What was that? The Tennessee game. Oh, my goodness. Our former producer, Kat, she's listening right now, and she just went, oh. She was like, no. Miss Becky, her friend, is like, don't bring up that game, Joe. Gunnar Stockton, absolutely elite in the fourth quarter. If they get a reliable passing game, I think that they would move up from 6 into the top 5. I don't know who they're throwing the football to. I love their defense. They've got plenty of star power on their defense. They've got KJ Bolden, Ellis Robinson. They've got an emerging star in their defensive line, and Elijah Griffin. He was a freshman All-American. Again, they still have Kirby, and they still run the SEC. There's no doubt. But here's the problem. They're not playing at a level like the top 5 teams in the country are playing right now. And I do have my questions surrounding, like, okay, you get into a game with, let's say it's even Texas. Let's say it's in the playoff against whomever, right? Indiana, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Can you score with those teams? Notre Dame averaged 42 points a game last year and might average more this year. So can they do that? Stockton's a gamer, there's no doubt, but who are you throwing to on the outside? College football season is almost here, and if you're like me, this is the best time of year. You're looking at the schedule, checking the matchups, and circling the big games you have to see in person. There's just nothing quite like that Saturday stadium atmosphere. Now, once you pick your game, the next step is finding the best deal on tickets, and that's where SeatGeek comes in. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app, featuring more than 70,000 events across sports, concerts, and live shows. I use SeatGeek because they make the entire process effortless. The app makes it super easy to search for your team, compare seats across the entire stadium, and grab your tickets in just a few taps. Everything is sent directly to your phone, so getting through the gates on game day is completely seamless. Plus, every single ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, so you can shop with total peace of mind. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code Klatt10 for 10% off your next set of college football tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any college football tickets with promo code Klatt10. Make sure you click on the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later on. We just want to thank SeatGeek for their support of the show and all of college football. All right, now we get into the top 5. I've got Indiana in the top 5. They are my number 5 team, and candidly, this might be low. Discount Curt Cignetti at your own peril. He's 27-2 at Indiana and was a masterful coach last year and really year 1 as well. If we think that's going to fall off, we are sorely mistaken. Sorely mistaken. I feel like Edward R. Rooney, Dean of Students. If you think Ferris is just going to coast through his last few months of school, you are sorely mistaken. This guy ain't falling off. He's just not. He's just not. One of the great things that he does is evaluate talent out of the transfer portal. You think these transfers that they brought in aren't going to immediately succeed? They will. They will. Sig was the best head coach in the country last year. He kept his coordinators. You got Mike Shanahan and Brian Haynes on the offensive and defensive side. I know they lost a lot, but let's just play a thought experiment out here for a moment. And this is not an indictment on Fernando Mendoza or Curtis Rourke, but play a thought experiment out for me just really quickly. I want you to think of Curtis Rourke coming from Ohio. I want you to think of Fernando Mendoza coming out of Cal. And I want you to think of Josh Hoover coming out of TCU. Without what they did at Indiana. So block out what Mendoza did at Indiana. Block out what Rourke did at Indiana. Block out what you think about, Hoover at Indiana. Just at their previous school, who would you pick? You would pick Josh Hoover. Again, no disrespect to Fernando Mendoza, but you would pick Josh Hoover. He's got more elite traits than both of those guys. Now, did he struggle with turnovers? Yes. Was he a bit more of a gunslinger? Yes. Did they have to? Yes. Is he going to get introduced to, as Curt Cignetti said, his 2 best friends, a running game and a defense? Yes, he will be introduced to those. And I trust that Curt Cignetti knows how to coach his quarterbacks. Mendoza struggled with interceptions. And look over the last 2 years with first-year quarterbacks in that system. What did Mike Shanahan and Curt Cignetti do with Curtis Rourke and Fernando Mendoza? They threw the lowest amount of interceptions as a percentage goes as it relates to the amount of attempts in the country. They've got the lowest percentage or interception rate in the country. Lowest interception rate in the country. Do you think Hoover's going to play better? Yes. Do you think Cignetti evaluated him correctly? Yes. These are obvious answers. And think about it from this perspective. No one threw more RPO passes, run pass option passes, than Fernando Mendoza a year ago. Guess who was number 2 on that list in college football? Wild guess. Josh Hoover. Probably going to work. They brought in a guy like Turbo Richard to run the football. 750 yards at Boston College. He's not a big name, but neither was Kalon Black, Roman Himby. Those guys, really effective running the football. So now you're going to have Turbo Richard. You're going to have Kobe Martin. Kobe Martin, when he got into the ballgame for Indiana last year, he averaged 6.5 yards per carry. This is a run-first team. They got a great offensive line led by Carter Smith, the All-American. They're not going anywhere. They brought in Nick Marsh from Michigan State on the outside to replace Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper. They've got Charlie Becker. He's back. They've got a really good defense. I know they've got to replace some of those JMU guys, those core guys. They've got to replace D'Angelo Pons, but they bring back Jamari Sharp. He had the pick to end the national championship. They bring in a transfer from Penn State, A.J. Harris. I'm going to just trust Curt Cignetti. I think the schedule is a little bit tougher than what they've had over the last couple of years. They've got Ohio State at home. They've got Michigan. That's on the road. Those are back-to-back in October. They've got USC coming out to Indiana. They've got a trip to Washington. Those are back-to-back in November. More difficult schedule, elite recruiter, elite evaluator, elite program. Indiana 27-2 over their last 2 years. Number 4. Bullish on this team. Here we go. Miami. Miami fans think I hate them. This is good, right? Miami, aren't you? Or do you have to be number 1 to get any love? I have this buddy, and he's on the Miami chat boards all the time. They hate me. I don't understand. It's like you guys have this great highlight. John Beeson got a Nevin Shapiro bounty by pile driving me into the ground, and you think that I hate Miami because of that? I love that. The only thing that I hate about it is that I didn't have a higher bounty. Love the Canes. Last year was a breakthrough for them, there's no doubt. Mario Cristobal getting all the way to the national championship game. They've recruited and developed at a high level. They're great on the offensive and defensive line. And granted, they're going to have to replace a lot of those guys, Maui Noah, obviously Bain, Mesidor, but they're doing it with elite 5-star type players. Remember when Georgia and Alabama would always get the benefit of the doubt when they graduated and developed NFL talent? It's like, yeah, well, it's 5 stars coming in to replace them. That's exactly what's going on at Miami. If you look at their defensive front, yes, they lose Bain and Mesidor. They have 5 former 5 stars on that defensive line, including the Missouri transfer Damon Wilson. They should be pretty good. They bring in Darian Mensah at quarterback. They've got Malachi Toney on the outside. They've got Mark Fletcher in the backfield. Cristobal knows how to own the offensive line. He knows that. Okay, I think they'll develop, even though they lost Maui Noah. I thought they got much better in big games, and they did. They didn't fail down the stretch in November, in particular on the road. They succeeded, and they won big. They beat Ohio State in the playoff. This team was real. Played for a national championship, was right there. But in a couple of their losses, there were still these blunders that take place. They've got to clean those up. There was a roughing the passer personal foul in the SMU game late, and that ended up costing them. They lose that game. And then they give up a blocked punt when Indiana's not even trying to block the punt in the national championship game for a touchdown, and they lose that game. So those have to get cleaned up. There's no doubt. But there was a giant step forward last year. They're the class of the ACC. I believe they go to the ACC championship game, and that team is absolutely in the playoff. I can't wait to watch them play Notre Dame. That game's going to be incredible. We move on to number 3. At number 3, a team that is going to be almost completely opposite to what they were a year ago, and that's Ohio State. So the Buckeyes are going to be at number 3. Buckeyes could have one of the best offenses in the entire sport. Quarterback, back, Julian Sayin. Best player in college football, Jeremiah Smith, back. Offensive line, lots of returning players up there on the offensive line. Running back, Bo Jackson. So this offense, which was a question mark a year ago with a brand new quarterback, and it's like, oh, what are we going to do on the offensive line? Who's going to run the football? Now we know those answers. What we don't know is who's replacing all those elite NFL players on the defense. So now you're going to have to replace 8 starters on the defense, and it's not just any starters. It's guys like Caleb Downs, Narvell Reese, and Sonny Styles. These guys were littering the top of the NFL draft. So it's going to be maybe a little bit different. That was a team that was a defensive team a year ago. They were the number one defense in college football under Matt Patricia. Now, do I think that they recruit and develop at a high enough level? Again, back to the benefit of the doubt that we just gave Mario Cristobal and the way that he is recruited on the defensive line. Shouldn't we give that same benefit of the doubt to Ryan Day and Ohio State? Probably. You know, they were replacing a lot of starters last year. Arvell Reese was not a starter 2 years ago. Comes in 1 year as a starter, one of the best players in college football. They finished 12-2. They lost their last two. Indiana couldn't get, yardage and short yardage late. They lose to Miami. That big pick six was a huge, huge issue, and they lost the line of scrimmage. If they're better on the line of scrimmage on offensive line, which they should be, then this team could make another run. There's no doubt. I trust Ohio State. I trust Ryan Day. This is an elite program at the elite level. They will be in the top 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the foreseeable future in college football. That's where they're at right now. That's where they're at. Really excited to see 5-star wide receiver Chris Henry, by the way. I can't wait to see him go along with Jeremiah Smith on the outside. Sane could have a huge year again. Offense probably leading the day. Who's number 2? Again, I have a clear number 1. Number 2 is Notre Dame. Notre Dame. I love an angry team, and this team is angry. They bring back a ton of experience. I love that. That really is kind of the MO of college football. If you want to go and win a championship, what do you need? You need experience. We've seen that with veteran rosters at Michigan, veteran roster at Ohio State, veteran roster at Indiana. The last 3 national champions were littered with veteran rosters. When you get all this turnover in the transfer portal in college football these days, it's like, what do you need? You need experience. And they have that. Again, 15 returning starters. Marcus Freeman has elevated this program. He has done an incredible job. The indictment for Brian Kelly at LSU wasn't just what was going on at LSU. It's what was going on in South Bend. Brian Kelly told us that Notre Dame had a ceiling, and Marcus Freeman ran in like Mario and just started busting the bricks out. Ding, ding, ding. He is recruited at an elite level. This team is absolutely fantastic, almost everywhere. Maybe questions at running back, only because you're replacing 2 first-round running backs. Okay? Do we think that they're going to be able to be replaced? Yeah, because they are great on the offensive line. You've got C.J. Carr. Remember, C.J. Carr, my top quarterback in college football going into the season. He was, what was he, number 3 on my list last week of top 10 players overall. You've got my my second-rated overall player, and Leonard Moore on the defensive side. The defense should be outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. They didn't get into the playoff a year ago. Now they've got this cake schedule and absolutely will be in the playoff, probably as a rested team. Their toughest game is Miami. We all know that. A tough game against maybe BYU on the road. They've got SMU on their schedule. The offense loses those first-round running backs, but I think that they could be a passing offense. Carr, elite thrower. Now you bring Jaden Greathouse back after losing a bunch of games where he played in 4 games a year ago. You bring in a guy like Quincy Porter, and you've got Mike Denbrock. I don't think he's got a problem throwing it around. Remember, he was the coordinator for LSU when Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. I think the offensive line could be the best in the nation, so whoever's toting the rock is going to be doing it behind absolute monsters. That defense is going to be absolutely sick. Absolutely sick. 9 starters back, including the front runner for the Thorpe Award, Leonard Moore. 5 starters from last year's front 7. Watch out. Watch up. I mean, road game at BYU, home game Miami, and SMU. They're number 2. I'd have them number 1, but guys, there is a clear number 1, and I honestly don't understand why this is not more unanimous. If you actually evaluate rosters out there and what's coming back, everybody else has a question. Everybody. Everybody in the top 10. Everybody in the top 7. Texas, are you going to be able to run the football? Georgia, who's catching the football? Is Hoover going to replace Mendoza? What is Miami going to do on the offensive line? Can you replace 8 starters on defense for Ohio State? Can you replace 2 first-round running backs for Notre Dame? Guess who doesn't have questions? Not one. Oregon. Oregon's number 1 in the country, and quite frankly, it's not close, at least at this point. I'm not saying other teams aren't great. I'm not saying that they're absolutely going to win the national championship, but if you're doing this evaluation, if you're going through this process in the preseason, there is no question about Oregon. The only question about Oregon is maybe down the line, it's like, okay, can you rewrite these performances from your last two blowout losses in big games, the Rose Bowl to Ohio State, and then that semifinal to Indiana a year ago? But let's not they've lost 3 games in 2 years, and all 3 losses were to the eventual national champion. We don't think they're right there. They are right there. And this team has no questions. Quarterback, he's back. Backfield, back. O-line, strong. Wideouts, great. Decorian Moore, Evan Stewart. Tight end, probably best in the country. Defense, elite. Top end, everywhere. Best defensive line in the country. All of those guys back. Mateo Uiagalelei should be in the NFL, back at Oregon. Tatum Tuioti should be in the NFL, back at Oregon. Amari Washington should be in the NFL, back at Oregon. Bear Alexander should be in the NFL, back at Oregon. It's like, what are we doing? You've got an experienced elite quarterback with greatness around him, including a strong line of scrimmage, and you've got the best, most elite, most experienced defensive line in the country. Oh, by the way, that young secondary from a year ago is only a year older, and they brought in Coy Parrish from Minnesota, who's an excellent safety in the transfer portal. There's no questions. You've got Brandon Finney out there at corner. Dan Lanning has built a roster that is the best roster in college football. Walking into this season, there is no roster, there is no starting 22 that rivals Oregon's, period. Dan has been elite. Now he's got to replace both coordinators. He did that from within. And the only question that we have about Oregon is, can you get into a big moment and not lay an egg? Did it against Ohio State in particular in that first half of the Rose Bowl. Did it in the first half against Indiana last year in the national semifinal. I think that they'll get better from that. Dante Moore, he's back. He's going to learn his lessons. He's not throwing a pick 6 on the first play of the national semifinals. So I think this is a team that can go one more step. They're not going to lose by 41 to Ohio State or 56 to Indiana. Like, this team is an elite team. They're my number 1 team. I know Dan asked me not to do this, but there's no other team you can put at number 1. Some other teams that I thought about that didn't quite make my top 25. I already mentioned one right off the top. That was UCLA. Utah, Devin Dampier, he's still there for Morgan Scalley. I thought about Utah. Thought about Missouri. I like what Missouri has. I thought about Clemson. Can Dabo bounce back? I thought about Cal with Tosh Lapoy, Boise State. So there were some teams out there that I thought about, but this is where I land. My preseason top 25, folks. I hope you enjoy. Do you agree? Do you disagree? We've got more content coming up next week. If you have not subscribed to the show, please do that right here on YouTube at Joel Klatt Show, on social media, wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening on podcast form, rate, review us, follow us, do all of those things. Can't wait for the season. There's your top 25. Enjoy the week, everybody.